In order to run our MySQL database as a Docker container, right? So our Docker desktop should be installed on your laptop. Okay. Then thereafter, what you could do is I will paste this command in our WhatsApp group as well as a Telegram group. Okay. So this bit uh, is our MySQL. The image what I am using is MySQL 8.0. Okay. This bit it should be available. It is currently present in the Docker Hub Docker Docker Hub container registry. Okay. So what we need to do is just run this particular command. Okay, let us say docker run. Okay, I will explain one by one. So docker run. Okay, I'm saying restart as always. uh, Restart always, I'm saying it. So then uh, the name of the MySQL. Okay, this name can be anything, whatever the name you wanted to give it, right? So those details you can mention it. So I'm using a dev network over there. Um, a special network I have created in order to deploy this MySQL container on that particular network. Okay, and here -v stands for volume. Okay, so here if you could see, I have given a user San Courtney desktop and MySQL data 8.0. Okay, so it is basically our volume where all the tables or database what we created, right, that will go and reside it. Okay, so I will say let me say today's date is 20th May. I will say 20th May. Okay, I'll say this particular data in this particular folder, it will go and create all the data folder for MySQL database. So it is mapped with variable slash lib slash MySQL. Okay, so -p is stands for the port. Sorry, -p stands for a port. 3306 is the port on my laptop. It will be running. This 336 is the port where inside the container this MySQL database will run at. Okay, -d stands for a detached mode. This container is running on a detached mode. Okay, so -e stand for a environment. So do you wanted to set a environment variable, right? So in that uh, in order to set the environment variable, we use this variable. Okay, so if you could see, what I'm setting is MySQL root password. Okay, this is my root password. Okay, so in MySQL by default, if any variable is set with this particular value, right, this particular variable is set as an environment variable, so automatically MySQL will think that this is a root password. Okay, let's go and so currently I've given it as a MySQL at the rate 123. Okay, so it's again a demo, but in production higher environment we won't do this. Okay, this is just a demo. That is the reason we have kept it like this. This MySQL dot 8.0, it is our image. Okay, this MySQL is our image. 8.0 is the version of this particular image. So if you wanted to quickly check it out, right, so this is basically MySQL. I'll say Docker Hub. If you go to Docker Hub, I'll search MySQL. So go to here, this is our MySQL. If I go to tags, right, I'll say 8.0. Okay, so there are so many versions are available. So what currently I'm using is this one. Okay, this is the, you see, this is our image. Okay, with version, this is what I'm using it. So let us run this out. So if you see, it has run in the detached mode. Okay, if I go to my Docker Hub, so if you could see, 5 seconds ago it was started. Okay, this is our MySQL container. Okay, running on my laptop. So let us go and log into our terminal. Okay, so if I click on this bit, so it will open up a terminal for me. Okay, for those who doesn't know about MySQL commands, so MySQL is a structured query language database. Okay, so a few commands I will run it out. Okay, in order to log into this particular database, you need to type MySQL -u. U stand for a username, root. -p stand for a password. Okay, by default the super admin user is root. So minus p is the password, so it asks me to enter the password. So in my case I have set it as mysql@123. That is what I will enter. So now I have logged into MySQL successfully. My authentication is successful. Okay, so in order to see uh, all the database present in this particular MySQL DB, instance of this particular instance of MySQL DB, you need to say show databases. Okay, you would be able to see these many. Okay, so I wanted to create a database for myself for this particular demo. Okay, I'll say create database and database name. So I'll say DB. If I say it has created successfully, if I go and do a show databases, it will show me my database. So in case if you wanted to run few of the commands on this particular database, so in MySQL, what we need to say is use database name. Okay, I will say in this case use DB. So database is changed. Okay, so if I wanted to see the how many tables are present, okay, the command is show tables. If you say that, you would see empty set, meaning there are no data, no tables are present in this particular DB. Okay, this is a prerequisite for us. Okay, so in our case, what we will be doing is, as a first step, we will be going for creation of this backend. Okay, and first what we will do is create a database. That is what just now we have done it and created a database. Okay, so we will create a backend. Okay, so backend application. So what I will do is, first I will demo this bit. Okay, and then thereafter we will go inside of it, how exactly it has been done and all those bits. Okay, so if you see the backend, so this backend, it is running on my laptop. Okay, this is the specific code for that particular code. Okay, so here in the src folder, so whatever the database I have created it, right? So for that database, I need to mention my application.properties file. Okay, so this is a Spring Boot application. A front end is a Java. Okay, a Spring Boot microservice. So 90% of the Java application will be built on the Spring Boot itself, and the default choice is for all the microservices Spring Boot in case of a Java. Okay, so here if you could see, this is the our application. Okay, this is our Java microservice application. It is in order to interact with the database. In my case, database is running on localhost. So if you see here, this is my database, okay, which is running on 3306. Okay, if you see the port, it says HTTP localhost, right? So in order to connect in Java, in order we need a data source URL. So in JDBC, we will using JDBC we connect to the database. So this is our database. Which type of database? In this case, it's a MySQL. Localhost 3306 is our port. Localhost is on my laptop. This particular application is running. So DB is our database. Okay, and this is our username and this is our password when we were creating our application, right? So that is what we have given it. Okay, so this bit, so in case think that you have created a different database, you need to make sure that this particular database, the name has to be mentioned it over here. Okay, so how exactly you have to run this particular Java application? In Java application, in order to build and deploy our application, we use a build tool or a package manager called as a Maven. Okay, Maven is the one which is used to do build and deployment on a Spring Boot application. There are multiple others, for example, Gradle and all. So in this particular demo, we'll go for a Maven bit. Okay, so now, uh, so if you see here, there is a target folder is present. Okay, so if you wanted to few commands, I will run it out. Okay, so Maven has a goal. Okay, so there are pre-built goals are present in our Maven. Okay, for example, Maven clean. Okay, Maven clean, what it does is it deletes all the artifacts it was created by a previous command. Okay, what it does is it starts in a clean slate. Okay, so if I do a clean, right, so if you could see here, there is a target folder is present and classes files are present, right, and there are jars are present. Okay, you may ask what is jar and all those things. I will explain it right away. Yeah, so if I say maven clean, right, so automatically maven will go and delete this particular target folder. Okay, so let us see that. So if you see, it said deleting this target folder. Now if you see, the target folder is gone, right? So if you wanted to do a in how Java works is basically uh, a bit of a background on the Java. Okay, so if you see, the all the Java code, Java was built on in order to work with the machine level, in order to interact with the machines, right? So this Java was started of that this particular language was built in order to interact with the machines. Okay, so Java is uh, written in the file extension with a .java file. Okay, in order to interact with the machines, right, it has to, the code has to be compiled in a format of a dot class. The extension should be dot class if if in order to interact with that, in order to interact with the machines. Okay, so what you need to do is, first thing is, what we need to do is we need to compile the source code so that machine can understand our whatever the code, Java code we have written it, a Java developer has written it, right? So that it has to be understood by the machines in order to process that request. Okay, so in this case, what we need to do is we need to run a compile. Okay, the already pre-built commands are present. So if you say maven compile, so if you see, there is no target folder is present. Okay, so if I say maven compile, right, so what it will do is it will compile all the .java files which was present over here, and it will create a target folder. And if you could see here, it will create all this .class file. So you are unable to see the extension of it, so I'll say I'll open it in a finder. So if you see here, the same file, whatever the .java was exists, it will compile it and create it with the same file name, only the extension will be .class. So inside, if you go employees .class, right, so like this. So Maven compile is used for that purpose. Okay, so now next what we will do is, in order to run our application, okay, so let us run our command. In order to run this application, which has to connect to the Docker MySQL container, what we would be running is maven bring hyphen boot colon run. Okay, this is the command in order to run this particular Java backend application, which will talk to our MySQL database. So let us run this. So if I run this this particular command, so what it does is, this microservice, Spring Boot microservice is started, okay, on my laptop. So by default, this Spring Boot application framework contains a Tomcat server inbuilt in that one, so which will host this particular application. So our backend application will be built and deployed to the inbuilt Tomcat server. So if you could see here, it mentions it out. Tomcat server has been started on a 8080 port. Okay, so how exactly you can access this particular application? So you go to browser and just say localhost v1 employees. So if you see, it shows a empty list. Okay, so it doesn't have any data now. Okay, how exactly data will be created? So it is basically how these are all the APIs. Okay, what we have created in this particular backend application. So backend application, it is a you could have heard about a backend Java developer or backend .NET developer. So those guys are responsible to create a APIs for any front end. So in this case, front end can be a React JS application or your website, or it can be your mobile application. Okay, it can be anything. So now what we will be doing is only concentrate on the backend and DB. Okay, in the backend we have developed a few of our APIs. For example, in normal standard is CRUD. CRUD. If you type that, so be able to find this particular API. So in normal application, right? So if you wanted to log into any website, right? So if I say I will log into LinkedIn. Okay, I'll say LinkedIn. So if you could see here, if you wanted to sign up, right? So if I say new to LinkedIn, so if you wanted to sign up to the LinkedIn itself, you need to enter your mail ID and password. And once you click on agree and join, then only the account will be created on a LinkedIn. Okay, this is a normal process all across the any of the website. Okay, so similar kind of a application we will be building it now. Okay, so if you could see, uh, CRUD stand for a create, meaning create a application for whatever the user enters, right? So that application, that record will be created in the database. Okay? R stand for a read, meaning if you wanted to list it out or check how many users are present, you will do a read operation, read API call. Okay, API stand for a application programming interface. Okay, so it's basically in order to uh, interact with the database, right? You should require these APIs. So in here, if you could see, if you wanted to create a record, so what will happen is will be a create API, okay, present on the backend. Front end will call this particular create API, okay, and you will pass all the details, first name, last name, and email ID, right? So that create API will invoke a database and create a data inside the database. Okay, let us do that particular example. Let us take one by one. Okay, this create API, in order to create a data, right? Uh, so how exactly you can invoke that particular API? Okay. So in those cases, our uh, postman will come into picture. So sorry. So in this postman, the same API, right? So we have multiple APIs we need to call, right? So in this case, we would be calling post method. Okay, post method. In this particular post method, we need to enter a data, right? So if I say first name, last name, and email ID, okay, this is the dummy data I'm giving it. So in case of registering to any of the website, these are the basic details you will pass it on. Okay? So what I am doing here is basically from a front end, or from a front end is nothing but in my case is a postman. Okay, for those guys who doesn't know about a postman, the postman is a one kind of a software which is majorly used in our development in order to test the APIs. Okay, so it will act as a kind of a front end. Okay, so here what we are passing is this is our backend application URL, API v1 employees. Okay, here we are passing first name as Sangam, last name as K, email ID as this. Okay, so once here what we need to note is we are creating a record, that is C for create. Okay, so if I wanted to run this particular application, um, the, run this particular API, I will just need to do send. So if you see, the fee details has been passed over. So if you could see 200 is okay. Okay, meaning our API request was successfully um, it was successful. Okay, so if you could see here, ID is automatically generated. We are not passing it. Okay, so this is our create API call. Okay, so if you wanted to go and database and check it out, if I go here, I'll go to this particular database. So if you remember, we did the show tables earlier. If I do a show tables again, you will see employees tables present. Okay, so if I wanted to enter, I wanted to see the data present in this particular database, in this particular tables. So let us say select star from employees. So if you could see, my first name is Sangam, last name K came in picture, and email ID has been whatever I have entered, it has went in. Okay. So again, if I wanted to enter again, I'll say second record. I'll say yes, second second record. Okay. Okay. So if I say send now, the API call has been made. Okay. And the record it has been pushed in. So I will go and check it out. Docker. I will select star from employees. You could see my mail ID has been stored in the database. Okay. So in this way, the create API has been called in. Okay. So the next bit is the read API. So obviously, whatever the data has went in, right? So I wanted to execute a read query. Okay. So if you see R, the APIs has been built in this particular backend application. A front end being our postman, I will call a read operation, a read API. So in that way, what will happen is the application is present here. Um, the coding has been done on the backend. So when I say read operation, what backend does is it will read function has been called in. Okay, the work is go and fetch and go and interact with the database, make a connection, and fetch the list of a data, and it will display it in the front end. Okay, so if I mean, how exactly you can achieve? So the same. This is also get operation. It's the browser. Okay, if I say enter, you would be able to see both the record present. Okay, in via postman also you can do the same thing. Only what you need to remember, you need to pass as a get. Okay, get is to read. If I do send, right, you would be able to see first record and second record. Okay, so think that you wanted to read a second record only. So in that case, you will say employees slash 2. You see only the second record is visible. Okay, in my context part, I am passing another number. Okay, the ID of that particular record, that is what we are passing it. Okay, so in this way our read operation has been done. Okay, if you wanted to delete it, okay, so we'll delete as well. So I will duplicate the same bit. Okay, I will say instead of get, I will say delete. Okay, employees 2 rather than employee. Yeah, if I will do, I will delete a employee 2. So if I say like this, will say deleted, it goes true. So in database, if I go and see it, the second record is deleted. Okay, so even you can access over here, only one record is available now. Okay, in this way, what we are able to do is from backend application, the APIs is enabled. Okay, the APIs we will interact using either frontend, backend, or using postman. Okay, even the same command, right, the post command, so you can invoke using curl command as well. Above the send button, if you click on here, you would be able to get the curl command here. So you wanted to execute for curl command, right? So just paste this. So I will say is via curl mail ID. Okay, I'll say curl. Okay. The APIs can be accessed via majorly via website, curl command, or if you have a proper authentication and authorization, yeah, uh, or via mobile apps. Okay, so it can be done via multiple ways. So if I do enter, so if you see automatically ID3 has been generated. So if I go and get it, two record is the exit. We have just now deleted. 1 and 3's records are present. Okay, so if I go and see the database, it is both the records are present. Okay, so this is multiple ways of accessing the same application. Okay, so how you do it via front end. Okay, so what we have done is we have done the front end application. So I will. So this is a React.js application. Okay, so React JS application. So in order to access this npm, I'll say, in order to start this particular application, I'll say npm start. So if you see, this is our front end application. The all the records, if you could see, the two records exist. So in our application, the front end is this button. Okay, the back end is this, TV is this, right? So we were able to call the APIs using curl command, using Postman, okay, using our browser as well, right? So now we have introduced a front end application, which is React JS application. Okay, so if you wanted to add a user, so that is create a record. So click here, you just give via React. Say, if I say it, save it, the new record has been created. You can go to the database and check the record has been created, right? So if you wanted to view it, that is read, you are able to read it. Okay? So if you wanted to update it, I'll say updated, okay, save it. So it has been updated. You wanted to go and delete it, click on delete here, got deleted. Okay? All the CRUD API call, we have done it via our front end application. Okay, so this is about our CRUD application. Okay, so now we wanted to test the same thing, okay, via Docker. How exactly? Using Docker, we can run this particular application till date. So if you could see here, this is our front end application. Okay, so backend is running on my local laptop. If I do Control C, right, so my backend is gone. Okay, so if I do a refresh, front end is unable to interact with the backend. So that is the reason we are unable to see the data over here. Okay, because the middle layer itself has been gone. This itself has gone. If it uh, front end is unable to talk to the backend, right? APIs, right? So it is a static site. Nothing will be there, data, right? So that is what it happens. So we should not be hosting our application on our laptop. That is the reason what we do is we containerize it and push it in a our image into our image into any container registry, and using Kubernetes we will try to deploy it in a any Kubernetes cluster. Okay, so probably we will be going through it probably in tomorrow's session. Okay, the intention is build using Docker file. Okay, create an image, push it in a Docker hub, then pull it in our minikube and create a pod. Okay, the minikube we should be able to run our application. Okay, so this is on the Docker hub. The similar action what we will be doing is, so majority of our application, these images, we don't tend to keep it in a Docker hub, which is a public container registry. Instead of that, we will, each of these clouds, the CSPs, have created their own container registry. Okay, AWS has ACR, Azure has a ACR. Okay, so similarly, GKE has its own bed. Yeah. Okay, uh, so since it is a bootcamp for Azure, right? So we will be utilizing the Azure container registry in order to do this same application build and deployment. Okay. So what we will be doing is in tomorrow's session, the same thing, same application, whatever we are developing, right? We will build and deploy, build it, push the image to container registry, and then deploy it using the same Azure pipelines. Using our Azure pipeline, we will deploy it to the Kubernetes AKS cluster. This is what we wanted to do it using Azure pipelines. Okay, so let us see how it goes. Okay, before that, so currently our pipeline is running on my laptop. Okay, so not a pipeline, our backend is running on our laptop. Okay, so if you wanted to bring it back for backend, so now it is empty. So just now I've started it out. If I do a refresh, the data is visible over here, right? So now what we wanted to do is, rather than running the application on backend application on my laptop, we wanted to run it on our Docker container, okay, on our on our Docker. Okay, that is a first bit. So once we are able to achieve this, then we will dig into the EKS part. How exactly in Azure Kubernetes Service we can push the same application, okay, build and deploy to EKS cluster. Okay, so let us dig it further. Okay, so let me stop this bit. So the backend application, okay, so in order to do a build and deployment, any build and deployment of any application, okay, as I was saying, so in order to, if you see here, I have created a classes file. Okay, how exactly it was created? It's basically I have used Maven. Let us start. Let us take a couple of steps back. Okay, let us do Maven clean. Okay, so that the target folder is deleted. So everything it is fresh. Okay, so now what I will do is I will in order to, as I said earlier, all the Java coding, whatever we have written, it will be in a .java format. Okay, in order to machine to understand, we should it has to be compiled to a machine level language, that is a dot class in case, in Java case. Okay, so that bit, once it is compiled, right, uh, it will be there will, if you, your project has around hundreds of Java files, okay, if you compile it, there will be hundreds of class files, right? So if I ask you, if you have 100 of files and you need to send those all those 100 files to someone else, right, uh, in a compressed format and in a one file, okay, so obviously most of the you guys will say, I will zip it or I will tar it, right? So zip or a tarring is a using that you will make it as 100 files into one file and in a compressed form, right? So the similar process in Java, it has been done using Maven. Okay, so the when you say Maven compile, right? So I will say Maven compile. So what it does is it creates a target folder here and creates a classes files. Okay, and all the classes will be created in this particular folder. So now it has been compiled. Okay, dot class file has been created. So now I wanted to package it. The command is Maven package. So once you run a package, so what it does is it will create a end product of a package is the jar file create. This is the jar file. So building a jar file in this particular target location. So if you see here, this is the jar file that has been created, meaning it has been compressed and zipped into a single file. Okay, compressed what? All this dot class file will be compressed and created a jar file. So jar, the file extension jar stand for a Java archive. Okay, there are three, majorly three uh, versions, three extensions are there in Java. Dot jar stand for a Java archive. WAR stand for a WAR, web archive. Okay, ER stand for a enterprise archive. Okay, so this particular jar it has been created. Okay, in order to build this particular application, that is, okay, so the next bit is we should have a Docker file. Using Docker file, we need to build a image. Okay, so if you could see here, what we need to do is build a Docker file, use create a Docker file, then build it, and then create a Docker image. Okay, so in this case, I have already created a Docker file. I'll explain about it, what it is. Okay, so this is our Docker file. In order to build a image, that is using Docker file, we will build a image. Okay, so what we have told here is from this particular OpenJDK colon 20. So my image, backend image should be, its parent should be OpenJDK. Okay, my backend application, whatever I'm developing, right, that particular image should extend OpenJDK. Okay, this is the base file for my application. Okay, So, and it should be running a 20 version 20. It's basically OpenJDK is a JDK is nothing but stands for a Java Development Kit. Okay, the 20th version. So 20th version of a image of a JDK, we are getting that particular image. On top of that one, we are creating a directory called as a app. Okay, and then this is used. The second line is used to create a directory called as a work directory called as a slash app. Whatever the name you give it, it will create that. Okay, so next, the third line what we are doing is copy target the Spring Boot application, this particular jar. Okay, so if you could see here the jar file. Okay, you could ask me how exactly this particular jar file came into picture, the naming convention. Okay, the Maven works, uh, all this naming convention, or for this particular project, what are the dependencies required, right? It is built or it is defined in a pom.xml. Maven depends on a pom.xml for all this project related naming. Okay, so if you could see here, the Spring Boot, the first Spring Boot backend. Okay, the Spring Boot backend name is coming from this particular line number 14. Okay, after that 001 snapshot. Okay, so if you could see here, the version of this particular output would be this one. Okay, this is what we have mentioned it over. Okay, so these details and what are the dependencies of this particular framework, all those things it has been uh, defined over here. Okay, so in some other day I will explain about one by one what exactly it meant. Okay, uh, if you could see here, all these details it is mentioned over here. Okay, the naming of this Spring Boot, the snapshot, all those things it has been mentioned here and here. Okay, so now when we run a Maven package, right, what it does is it compiles it, it creates this jar file. Okay, it compiles and creates in a target folder. That is a beauty of our Spring Boot goals. Okay, it specifically creates a target folder. So when we are creating a Docker image, right, what we are saying is once it has been built, right, the code it has been built, make sure that copy the output of our package, Maven package, which is output is this jar file. Copy it to slash app and name it as this bit, this particular file name. So just doing a copy from my local laptop, and when it is creating or when it is baking that image, right, that image is copying this particular file inside of that particular folder itself. Okay, then thereafter, after line number 3, we are seeing line number 4, entry point. Okay, so our base image is as a JDK itself. Okay, so the Spring Boot application has to be run. Okay, what is this entry point? It is basically you could have known any operating system, right, Linux or Windows, during the boot up of or when you start it, right, during the start of your laptop, obviously it takes a boot time, it takes a little bit of time, right? So during that time you can mention which are all the softwares it has to run it when it's then the your laptop is getting started at that time. Okay, so those details you will mention at a startup time, start of your operating system, what all the things it has to do, what it has to do it. So in this case I have mentioned entry point is Java jar, and the jar, this particular jar name I have mentioned it, the path of it. So whenever my microservice or this particular container is running state, right, so what it does is it deploys this particular, it runs this particular application, the Spring Boot application. Okay, that is what I have mentioned it over here. Okay, so now let us go and build this particular application. Okay, so if I go back to images, okay, there are many images are present, so let it be there. Okay, I'll give a today's date. So if I say Docker image list, okay, so these many images are present. Okay, so I will say today's date, okay, 20th May. I will say the command to build the image is build minus T stand for a tag. Okay, I'm tagging the image as 20th May. Okay, and what I'm saying is where exactly my Docker file exists. That is what you need to mention. Okay? I need to say Docker build minus T stand for a tag 20th May, and where exactly the path of my Docker file. In this case, I'm in the same working directory. Could see this is where our Docker file exists. So I will say dot in this case. Okay, if I say that, but okay, it expects a lower case. I will say May. So if you could see, it is doing, it has done a 3 tasks. Okay, first task, it's basically from Docker container registry picking this particular OpenJDK. That is the first line. The second line is basically, second work is a creation of a work directory slash app. That is what this bit. The third bit is copy Spring Boot application which is present in the Docker file and move it to inside the image in this particular path. Okay, that is what I have done it. So if I see here, it hardly took 5 seconds. You see here, Docker image list. I will do a grep get May. Okay. You see, 51 seconds ago it was been deployed. Okay, it contains a 551 MB. Okay, it has been built. Okay, if you wanted to see without the grep command, so if you see, the first one is the one. Okay, so now I wanted to do a, what activity I have done is using Docker file, I have created a Docker image. Okay, so now I have to move this image to Docker Hub. Okay, so if you could see here, let me go to Docker Hub. Docker Hub. Docker Hub has a free account. You get it. Repo. Already have a Spring Boot. It has only 1.0 version. Okay, so think that wanted to create a newer version of page. So let me do one thing. I will go to repository. Let me create a new repository. I'll say 20th May Spring Boot. Okay, I'll use public itself 20th. Okay, like this I will use. Create it. Repository in a Docker Hub container registry, it has been created. You could see nothing exists. So let us go and push this particular, the image which we have created, into this particular repository. So tag, there are no versions exist. Okay, so now what we will do is, the image, you could see it exists with a particular name. Okay, you could see the repository, the column it exists is on this particular repository. So ideally, whichever the repositories you wanted to push it, okay, so that repository name should be mentioned here and over here. Then only it will be easy for us to push it. Okay, push it to that particular container registry. For that reason, you need to run another command called as a tagging. Tagging is nothing but a aliasing. Let's say, let us tag it. Okay? Tagging is, so for a one person, multiple name can be there, right? A nickname and all. The similar concept here. Okay. Else, I wanted to tag 20th May image to our Spring Boot tags. Say, go here. I'll say Spring Boot 20th. So this is my container registry account. This is my repository. Okay, this is the tag I wanted to give. So if you wanted to give 1.0 alphanumeric, that you can give it. So I'll go with the 1.0. So Docker tag, what was my old one and what is a new one. So once you enter it, if I do a Docker image registry, if you could see our the old one was with the 20th name. Okay, so if you could see the new one, the tagging is basically the image ID. If you see, if you're creating a new image, it will be unique. Okay, so in this case, what we have done here is, if you could, the image, both the ID images are same only, meaning is just done a aliasing it. Okay, some and the tag, the new tag, we have given it as a 1.0. So now what we will be doing is we need to push this particular image to our Docker hub. Okay, let us do that bit. Docker push, I will say, and then version 1.0. If I say Docker push, right, it started preparing it. Probably a couple of seconds it may take, but it should be able to push it quite fast. First image layer had pushed. So yeah, it took literally 21 seconds. Okay. So tag, if I click on that, if you could see 1.0, our version, it has been pushed in. Okay, this is the first part of it. That is via, we created a Docker file, we built it, built the image. The output was built after building of image was we have built a image, then we pushed to the Docker hub. Okay, so the image has been pushed over here. Okay, so in order to take it up further, right, so we have roughly around 10 minutes to be able to cover it out. What I will do is, freshly tomorrow I will do it, but before continuing further, so I wanted to explain about Docker Compose. Okay? What is Docker Compose? So if you could see here, we are built a application. Okay, we built a Docker Spring Boot 20th May application. Okay, in order to do a build and deployment of this particular front end, back end, and a database, a normal three-tier architecture, right? So in order to build this kind of application, three application is required, meaning three containers will be running on my laptop or my or, or on a Kubernetes EKS cluster. Three application will be, Anycost will be running it. All these three application has a different settings and all this. Okay, so if you wanted to run this three application as a within a click of a one button, okay, so that is possible rather than building first database and then backend, then front end, right? So in Docker world, we use a concept called as a Docker Compose. Okay, a group of similar application. Okay, we can group it under one name, and then we can go and build and deploy it. Okay, so for the example sake, okay, so if you search over the internet, right, Docker Compose. Okay, so if you see here, this is the Docker guys have built in these many application. Okay, these are all Docker Compose commands. Okay, so if I say you wanted to try MongoDB and React and Express, all this, that type of application, or let us say any Apache PHP application and a database application. So already they have developed this kind of a compose files. Okay, so I will show you that example how exactly it can be done. Okay, so we have created a compose file over here. Okay, let me stop for file front end as well down our compose file as well. Okay, so stop this of MySQL. Okay. So what we have done is, in order to run this particular type of application, so there is a Docker Compose. It has been written. Okay. So in order to bring up backend as well as a front end database, right, together, so we write a Docker Compose file. Here we will define which all the services it is required for us. In this case, backend is MySQL database, and a backend application as a Spring Boot RESTful web services. Okay. So this kind of application, two things you wanted to run in a single command. Okay. So what we mentioned is the database required, what all the container name should be there, image where it should refer, what is the environment variable, password and all, right? The database name and all. And then our backend application. Okay, so here we are referring this backend application will be built using a Docker file. Okay, and this will be running on a port 8080. Okay, it will depends on MySQL DB, meaning before running this bit, MySQL DB will run. Okay, that is the first priority. So this, in order to run this bit, MySQL DB should be up and running. Okay. So these two things we will club in a one Docker Compose file. Okay. In our actual the demo case, that also we will be running it, but little bit later point in time. That is probably tomorrow. So I wanted to run this. So you will say Docker Compose up -t in the location of this compose file. So if I say in one command, enter it. So if you could see, our MySQL DB is up and running. Okay. And on top of that one, our as a group, the two container was supposed to run. With the one command, we were able to run this. So if you could see here, this is the compose has done it. One, MySQL DB was installed, and second one is our application has been deployed. Okay. So in this way, what we do is a group of application we can combine under one concept, one YAML file. We'll mention it out, and we'll run using Docker Compose command. Okay, so this was one of the way we can club multiple application into Kelvin. Okay, and run our Docker all the container. We can run it in a one single command.